Okay, there we are. Well, we're coming along. Yep, there we are. I'm there. So it's working. So, hey guys, it's Sunday, pretty close to 2 o'clock. Our live show is coming on. I actually have quite a few questions that came in on the email, and so that gives me something I can talk about while we're waiting for people to show up and you can get your questions answered. There were a couple of questions about tarot cards, so I thought they'd be a good thing to start with since there was more than one. Um, then the first question was, do I use tarot cards in my practice? Which the answer used to be yes. I used them a lot in the beginning. In fact, I think tarot was probably the first doorway through which I found my way. I started using the tarot when I was in high school, so let's see, 1965, somewhere in there. And really the only decks that were available were the more traditional decks like the Rider-Waite deck, which is what I ended up getting. And studying that's what I consider a real tarot deck. Hi! And yes, it was Dark Moon too. And the symbolism and everything that was inherent in it, learning to read the cards and try to understand what they were talking about, was definitely a path into all sorts of different kinds of magic, the hermetic and ceremonial kinds of things, and planetary and all this other stuff. So the tarot was certainly something I enjoyed doing. And I had several different decks. I had a friend at one point give me the New Age tarot deck or something, and I think that was the deck she bought me and gave me. And that deck was interesting because it was different than the traditional tarot. It was supposed to be like updated for our current civilization, etc., and where we are evolutionarily, spiritually speaking. But that deck actually came to me a card a night. When I would go to bed at night, a card would come and tell me what it meant and what it was about. So that was the beginning of a really firm relationship with the tarot in general. And I read for myself and I read for others, but I came to the conclusion that reading for others wasn't something I liked particularly doing. For one, some people don't really want to know what the cards have to say, and if you're reading them, you have to tell them, because that's sort of, hi Ella, that's sort of the commitment that you make as a reader. If you're going to read cards for someone else, that you tell the truth and what you see. Otherwise, what's the point? But the other reason was because people are often so easily influenced by what a psychic or a reader might say to them. And I just at some point decided I didn't want to do that anymore. So I did it for myself. And doing it for myself was useful for me to find out where my issues were or where my problems might be coming. So that was interesting anyway. And then at some point I sort of stopped using the tarot because I didn't have any questions I needed to have answered in a method. That way it was just sort of all coming to me. So that was the first question, was about the tarot. But the second question about the tarot was from somebody else. And he wrote in that he is doing the tarot, but he doesn't do other forms of scrying like Ouija, pendulum, and whatnot, because he doesn't trust himself with those methods. But he wants to know how much stock he should put into his current interpretation of the cards. So he's wondering about that question as self-fulfilling prophecy and his own reading biases. So there is no doubt that your internal biases and your perception of symbolism and so forth can affect what you get out of the cards. and your understanding of the meaning of the cards changes. It's similar to dream interpretation, where they can mean a lot of different things, and that depends on where you're at. He mentioned something about some cards being like hostile or dishonest with certain people, which I haven't heard. But there could be a difference between like tarot cards and divination cards of other types. Because to me, the tarot is like the traditional tarot. That is like a whole system of divination and symbolism and so forth that kind of is complete, regardless of the style of that you're using. But divination cards, they have all kinds. They have ones to tell you your medicine powers or whatever. They've got a fairy deck, which someone gave me, which I think is wonderful and I love it, but I don't use it as a tarot deck. It's like, because it's not a tarot deck. So that part of the question I'm not sure about. So, okay, hello, Violet. Someone wants to know about how to attract the Fae. And I don't understand that question because I don't try to attract the Fae. They're just everywhere. I mean, they're all over the place. I think a better question is, how do you make yourself appealing to them so that they want to come and interact with you, rather than how it's sort of like attracting them, I guess. I'm just trying to think of the right way to answer that question. Since, anytime you have living plants and organisms and stuff, you're going to have Fae around, because that's sort of their role. That's what they do. That's what they're a part of, the magical spiritual ecosystem of the planet and our life forces and so forth. So paying attention to the plants and your environment, being out in the woods and out in nature where you can interact with the energy that's there, becoming more acquainted with how trees feel about things, and learning how to understand what stones and rocks are trying to say. It's expanding your awareness into other types of consciousness and beginning to interact with other forms of consciousness that makes you or helps you to develop the skills and abilities that you would need to be able to tell when the Fae are interacting with you. So that's about all I can think of to say on that, just right off the bat. I draw to connect with the Fae. It's a sort of offering. Yeah, that would probably be something that they would enjoy. I feel they like it when art is dedicated to them. And art is a wonderful form of expression because, it's an offering of your energy and your feelings, your emotions, and it all gets together into the art, and it makes you more present, because when you're doing art, you have to be there with it in the moment. So it would be, a form of meditation and spiritual awakening and that kind of thing. So yeah, that would be that. So someone wants to know, what about astrology, and do I pay attention to that? I've talked about this a couple of times, and I am generally aware of astrology. I don't pay as much attention to it as some other people who are seriously into astrology. I see it as sort of a bit of a guideline as far as, maybe larger forces and influences that might be in my life right now, or tendencies that I might have to work on as far as that goes. But, a good astrologer can do some amazing things with a chart, just like any other form of divination. The tool is often just the excuse for a person who is good at reading things to have some external thing that says, this is how I'm doing this, and so they don't have to depend on just themselves and their own intuition because they don't feel confident in it enough. So having an external form, whether it's the tarot or whether it's astrology, gives them an in to that part of their mind, and then the intuition and so forth can come forth from that. So, I think people who are good at it are amazing, and I hate math. So I'm not good at all the angles and things like that, but I plant by the moon, and I I have my awarenesses of celestial forces that are just sort of there, whether they're specifically astrology or not. So, hello, Taylor, and hello, Michelle, and hello, Lilu. Lilu. Lilu says, I'm a beginner. I'm not sure where to start educating myself. Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? There's so many things you can learn. There's so many ways you can go. I did do a video just on, where do I start? But the thing about this particular path is it's self-motivated and self-directed. So there's no wrong way to start it. You can start with the tarot. You can start with crystals. You can start with following the wheel of the year and getting in tune with nature. You can start with trying to connect with lunar forces, going out in the full moon and bathing in the moonlight and just opening yourself up to that. You can start with meditation, any kind of meditation that helps you to focus and be in the moment is going to be a good way to start. That's both the joy and the annoying thing about this path is there's no one book that says this is how you do it, this is how you start. But learning about the basics and not pushing yourself too hard, I mean, it takes time for these things to sort of settle in, and there's a lot of stuff to do. I mean, to be a really good magical user or what have you, the shadow work, knowing who you are, is important, where meditations and whatnot can help getting your life together, figuring out how to do it when you're having a busy life, all that stuff. So let's see. So cattle, Tweety, Celtic Tweety? Cat like Tweety. I can't read. Apparently these are too small for me to read. I leave an offering for the Fae like a cake or bread on my windowsill. What should I do after? It might be a silly question. Should it disappear or should I throw it away after a few days? Okay, so in a lot of cultures, like in Bali, for example, where they worship and deal and give offerings to the gods on a regular basis, they have their home altar, and when they are getting ready to eat, they always put the food on the altar first, and then they wait for a period of minutes, not that long. And their idea is that whoever they gave the offering to has taken the virtue that it wants out of the food, and the fact of them giving it to them is part of that, and then they eat the food. So it isn't necessary in that sense to leave the food there forever. You can leave it out for a few minutes or overnight. You can then compost the food or give the food to birds or eat the food if it's food that stays well overnight or whatever. I don't think it really matters what you do with the food once you've done the offering, because they obviously don't eat food. So it's the energy exchange of you thinking about it and presenting it, leaving it, offering it, and honoring the energy that you're giving it to. It develops that connection, that relationship energetically between you and whatever it is you're working with, whether it's the Fae or a deity or a spirit of some kind. So that's what that's about, and it opens you up to the energy that you're presenting it to. So you're kind of like creating a doorway and an avenue of connection in there with that. So Violet says, on magical attack, when you do not know where it comes from, how can you make it stop? Many crows and one white bird above me. Well, if you don't know where a magical attack is coming from, just the general kind of stuff of shielding yourself, shielding your home, programming your energy field and your I'm losing my words at the moment. Your wards to send anything that's coming at you back to the sender. That's what I do. Is like, if I don't need to know when, if, or who, if I'm under attack, I just automatically send it back to its source. And if you return it to its source, then it does its thing. And somebody who actually is working actively to attack other people magically, it's going to have a pretty serious rebound on them when it comes back, because they put a lot of, if they're interested in trying to attack someone and put a bunch of energy into it, and they send it out with this like negative intent, and then all of a sudden it doesn't go, it just comes back right at their head. Well, yeah, it's going to leave them reeling. So that would be what you would do for a magical attack. You don't have to know who's doing it. But the thing is a lot of times you might assume you're under attack just because things aren't going well. Like me going to the grocery store this morning. I mean, it was a very strange trip. I bought a pie, a nice apple pie, and I put it on my cart, and I rolled out of the store, and somehow the pie flipped out of the cart, out of its packaging, and landed upside down on the street in front of the store. And then I had to go into the store and, get someone to come and like clean up the pie so that nobody else would get hurt. I had a nice young elderly gentleman who volunteered to keep guard of my cart with all my other food in it, and then they let me have another pie. And then I had a similar thing happen at the gas station right afterwards. I lost my card and I couldn't find it. I had to move all my seats. And I thought, okay, this is one of those days when I have to be extremely focused and careful of what I'm doing, because random stuff is going to happen. But I don't think I was under attack. I think it was just one of those things that was out there. So partly it depends on how you choose to look at it, and if you feed the energy of the idea. The more you feed that idea, the stronger it gets. So that's just sort of an aside to that. So all my mail coming wrong, physically falling, so many cruddy things all at once. A sense it is wrong. And I know that you're going through a lot of stuff, and I'm really sorry that it's happening, but it may not be a magical attack. It may be something else. And you're just going to have to figure out what to do with what's coming and try to change the narrative that you're having with the universe, because it's, in the end, you're in charge of where your feet are going. So I don't know what else to say about that. So T. Lamont says, hi Siofra, I was wondering, do you have any suggestions on leaving offerings for the Fae during winter? I have a space I leave offerings, but once there is snow on the ground, it will be much harder. Well, I think you can leave offerings on the snow. I don't see why that would be a problem. Lilu says, my parents are very religious. How do I make them believe it's nothing bad? That is difficult, because that's their belief. And I mean, all you can do is, if they want to know, is try to present it in as simple, straightforward terms as possible. Don't get into the details of all the other stuff that we might do. But, this is a nature religion, and it's focused on taking care of the earth and taking care of living things and being as good a person I can and as kind as I can to animals and all living things on the planet. And, it's like, it's difficult for people to fight that, but some of them will find a way, because, their training in the religion that they're in tells them that anything that isn't of them is of the other bad thing that's in the religion, usually some kind of evil devil or what have you. And so it's very difficult for people who are completely entrenched in those particular ideals to step aside from that. It's easier for us. I find it annoying in some level that I can accept that other people have different religions, mythologies, notions, and ways of interacting with the universe, and it's not my business to try and change them. And I can accept that that's what they have, and it's working for them somehow, or they wouldn't be doing it. And I know that they can't do the same for me. So it may never happen. You may just have to be able to know that what you're doing isn't wrong, and that it's right for you, and not get the emotional support from parents or friends. That's one of the reasons why this is not a path for everyone. So there's no easy answer to that. So Lilu, Harpy says, Lilu, you do you, hun, and if something makes your life better and you feel happy, don't worry about other people. And it's easy to say that, but harder to do when it's your parents and you're looking for their approval. It depends on your age, too. The older we get, the less care I have for other people's opinions, because I'm like, yeah, right. Okay, I'm sorry. Not going to be modifying my behavior to make you happy for what little time I might have left on the planet, so go away and leave me alone, that kind of thing. But it's easier for people who are my age or of my, I don't know, certainty than it is for people who are just starting out. And it's frustrating. All right, so let me see if I can get to another couple of questions here that people wrote in. So someone wants to know what tips I might have on dealing with feelings of inferiority, and this is a good question because this is something that we pretty much all struggle with, especially when we're first starting out on the path. And society is often giving us negative feedback when we're doing things. It's like it's telling us that this isn't working, or the people that we care about are telling us the same thing because we're in toxic relationships. Sometimes we're born into them, so we don't have much of a choice until later where we can change the dialogue. But the thing is that when you get to a point in your practice, those feelings, those voices, the inner voice that tells you there's something wrong with you starts to come out, and it starts to make noise and proceeds to attempt to undermine everything that you're doing, or so it would seem. And this is the beginning of shadow work, is learning how to deal with that and get in there and root it out. Knowing that you belong because you're here. You don't, life, see, Moida explained it fairly well once. She said life has its own reason for being. It doesn't have to have a reason that we could understand logically or even verbally. It's like life exists because it just is. And inferiority comes often from comparing yourself to other people. There's always going to be someone who's better at doing whatever it is that you're doing, but there's always going to be someone who's just starting out and not doing it as well. So taking comparison out of the equation is one of the ways that you can help yourself not feel, if you're comparing yourself to someone else and where they're at, you don't know what they've gone through, how they got there, or anything else, and it's unfair. The only real ruler that you have is your own progress. And so if you have made it from wherever you were to a better place, then you have made an accomplishment. If you have some people that you can trust that you're close to, you can practice what I call appreciation circles. And this is a method to start to short circuit that inner voice, learning how to take a compliment. I mean, we've all had that happen. I was bad at that. It was like somebody would say, "Oh, that's a great meal you made," and I'd go "Well, yeah, but I didn't have the thing that I wanted to have, and it didn't turn out quite the way I meant it to, and it took a lot longer than I thought it should, and I'm so sorry." And it's completely undo their very simple compliment, "This is a great meal." And so learning how to stop that dialogue and say, "Thank you," and take a compliment is very difficult, but the practice actually has an impact. It has an impact on your sense of self-esteem and your inner self when you can start to allow people to say positive things to you and accept that that's okay. And it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. When I was in therapy during that time period, I was in Incest Survivors group, and we did some guided meditation or guided journey, I guess, more than a meditation, where we were sort of taking stock of what was inside of us. And I'm not sure exactly how she did this, but for me, when I did this, I found that I had like a swimming pool full of shit, and then I had a bucket with some jewels in it. And it was a very powerful image for me because I realized that was what I had. That's how I felt. That I had these few things that I knew were really good and precious, but then everything else was just garbage and junk. It was just terrible. And so my work throughout the survivors group and then other things that I did magically and so forth was all about transforming that shit, which is great compost, into something that I could use. And that's when I started having all the dreams about finding gardens inside the closets and stuff. So that was pretty awesome. But, it takes time. It takes time to do that. And no one's going to get there quite the same way, but there's some ideas, at least. So let's see. So someone had a very different kind of question. And the question is, what can we do to keep from becoming an earthbound spirit after we die? Now, since we've talked about the paranormal before, it's not, out of the question, because I've met a number of earthbound spirits, that this would be a question that might come up. And it's been an interesting thought process trying to think of exactly what is it that helps, what causes an earthbound spirit would be the first thing. And of the ones that I've encountered personally that I've helped to cross over, one of the things is I need to get a message to my loved ones to let them know I'm okay or what happened. And that's a big one. So avoiding that one is to stay in daily communication with the people that you care about the most. So that should the unexpected happen and you suddenly find yourself on the other side, you will be clear of the need to let them know that you love them and you care about them, and that you're okay. That would be one idea. The one where you can have a sudden death that you don't know happened. It happened so fast that there was just no warning, is the one you can't really prepare for, I don't think, because that's just, that doesn't happen every time that there's a sudden death. So accepting the idea of traveling to the other side might help with that as well. If you have an active relationship with your guardian spirit or your guardian angel or your ancestors or your deity, whatever spirit relationships you might have, those active relationships, if something like that should happen, would probably assist in helping you keep going and explain it to you when you suddenly found yourself not in your body anymore and weren't sure what was going on. I'm trying to think. Oh, being attached to something and really looking forward to it was another one. So when I encountered the spirit of a man who was attached to the wheelchair he was going to be getting, but died before he could get it, he was there because his whole being was completely focused on and absorbed with the idea that this chair was going to give him mobility, was going to let him get out there, and he was just invested in this thing so completely that when he died, he didn't know he died because he was still invested in the idea of the chair, and he ended up going with the chair and thought he was kidnapped and someone had stolen his chair. It was quite a mess. But fortunately, I could come along and help explain things to him and get him to where he needed to go. But so I think that's about all I can think of on that subject. So Lilu says, I saw a mushroom ring in the woods last month. I don't know how much about it yet, so I just quickly left that area. Did I do the right thing? Well, they're called fairy rings because theoretically the fairies would dance in them, but this is how mushrooms grow.
Well,
certain varieties of mushrooms. This is how the mycelium spread itself out, the mycelium, and this is just the structure of those things. So we may put some kind of a mystical or spiritual meaning to them, but it may not actually need to have one. And the fears that we have with us, like the fear of doing something wrong, is another thing that we need to like learn how to set aside, because it's okay to make a mistake, and the universe isn't out there looking for you to like mess up so it can just whack you in the head and send you somewhere else. It's like everything is always in flux and changing and moving and doing and constantly evolving and everything else. So it's our idea of how things work that gets us into trouble more than anything else, I think. I was thinking about my daughter and how in olden times when she was born, they would have thought that she was a changeling when she was born, because she had long black hair down her back and had hair on her ears that came up in a tuft like this, and the longest fingers and toes I've ever seen on an infant in my life. And she looked like a fairy. It was just, that's what she looked like. But, you know, I know where she came from, and I was there to see the results. So, yeah, although I think we might have fairy blood in our family tree, she would be a pretty good evidence of what that might look like down the line. But still, that's an assumption, an idea that I'm making, and it may or may not be true. But she's still a fabulous child and a really good daughter. So, all right. So, someone else had a question about doing magic over distance, sending thoughts with energy, and if there is a danger that their energy would be intercepted on its way to where it must be because they don't feel they can't work on the astral plane as yet. And that's a good question, because it's probably not a problem unless you decide it is. I mean, thought travels instantaneously to wherever you're going. So it doesn't need to actually travel. You think it where you want it to be and it arrives. So there's no like trail of energy going through the ether that someone else could like tap into and catch and turn around and use and follow you back with it necessarily. Because that's not entirely true either, because when I was being attacked by I don't know what she was into the Satanic Bible, and she was using a voodoo doll and she was thinking at me, and you know, when I realized that it was happening, I waited, and when she was focused on me, I could follow her back to where she was and then stop her from doing that. So there is that potential for someone who knows what they're doing to follow the thought back to its source, but that's because everyone has a different feel and energy to them. It's like a signature. So if what you're doing is sending energy to help someone heal, or you know, give them energy to help them, chances are nothing like that will happen, because there would be no reason. You know, no one needs to know for sure where it was, and I don't think that a random spirit wandering through the ether would see your energy thought going to someone else and think, well, I'd like that, and then interrupt it, because your will could stop that from happening. It's your focus and concentration that keeps the energy going where you want it to go. So that would be an answer to that question. All right. So the last question that we have that was sent in is basically on the subject of all magic has a price. In this particular instance, this individual did his first candle spell to heal his dog, who had something wrong with him that the vet couldn't figure out, and he thought his dog was going to die. And the dog was instantly healed, so it was a success. And then shortly thereafter, he broke his arm, I think it was his arm. Yeah. And he put these two things together. Now, the first question is, do they belong together? This is the way the human brain works. If, like, this is the reason why people think that the flu vaccine shot gives them the flu. If they get the shot and then 3 days later they get the flu, they figure, I got the shot, it had flu in it, I now have the flu, so the shot gave me the flu, even though there's actually no evidence that these two things are connected, because there's no actual live flu in the shot, and it takes at least 10 days to 2 weeks before the shot's effective. But the brain likes to see associations. That's kind of the way it works. So these two things happen close together, they must be connected. So whether the healing of the dog and the breaking of the arm are connected is conjecture. And they may have nothing to do with one another, except for that underlying belief that has spread throughout the pagan community that that all magic has a price. They do that on every friggin' show I've ever watched, I swear. Magic has a price. You must pay the price if you do the magic. It's like, are you willing to pay the price? And, on a basic energetic level, there is an energy exchange that would be considered potentially the price, but it's not like if you do this one thing, you're going to have to die unless you believe it. Now, this happened to a group of witches in England during World War II. They believed if they did any magic that stopped someone else's free will, that there would be an ultimate price that some of them would have to pay. And these group of witches went to, I guess, the east coast of the British Isles of England, and they purposely raised a cone of power to keep Hitler from ever stepping on English soil. That was their whole focus, and there was a bunch of them that went there. And of the bunch of them that went there, some of them died. And they expected that would happen. So, was it necessary? I mean, in some ultimate sense? Or was it because they believed wholeheartedly that in order for them to do this, because it was going against a core belief that they had, it was required, then some of them willingly gave up their lives so that not everybody had to die. I mean, it's like you're looking at, yeah. So when it comes to magic and using energy, what you believe is happening and what you believe will happen is extremely important. Because if you think that that's what's going to be, then you make it, because that's what magic is. It's thought becoming action. Energy doing what it does. So, anyway, so cat-like, boy, I really have a hard time seeing that word. Cat-like Tweety says, do you have any advices for attracting love? My main advice for attracting love is to work on yourself and become the best version of yourself and the most authentic you that you can be. And then if someone is attracted to you, they'll be hopefully attracted to you for the right reason. Love is a funny thing. I mean, there's a lot of different levels. There's just plain old sexual attraction that some people would think of as love. There's the lifelong commitment, and like Ian and I have, where, the acceptance of another person just the way they are and who they are. If love is real, in my opinion, it starts from truth and honesty. And so you have to be who you are if you want to have real love. You can certainly go out and find casual, interloping, relationships. But part of that desire, that need to find an other, comes from that hole in ourselves, that insecurity, thinking there's something wrong with us or that we're not as valuable as we should be, and we need someone else to reflect that back to us to tell us that we're valuable, which is what a lot of people think love is. That's that feedback kind of thing, back and forth, that someone thinks you're beautiful, thinks your soul is beautiful, thinks your ideas are beautiful, thinks everything about you is just wonderful, and that helps to quiet that voice inside that says there's something wrong with you, but it only quells it for a time, because that thing can only be done from the inside out. It's like you can't do it from the outside in. It's sort of like having a black hole sucking energy in constantly from somewhere else, and it never fills it up because it keeps going out. It doesn't stay. So the only way to fill that is from the inside, and you fill that within yourself. And then if you don't need someone else in order to validate yourself, that's when you find someone else. At least that's how it was for us. Neither one of us were interested or looking in any way, shape, or form. We'd both given up completely on the whole notion altogether. And that's when we met. And the things just happened. So it was very much a surprise for both of us. So it's like it's So that's my advice, really, is to become your best you. That's going to get you where you need to go. That's going to draw you to the right places that you need to be in order to experience what that is. And some people never find it. I think probably because there's not as many quality people out there. I don't know. People are often quite I'm trying to say messed up and mixed up at the same time, and it's not working. So there's that. So Vitalia says, wish I could click the like button more than once. Well, thank you for clicking the like button. I didn't even know I had a like button. Oh, look, there's 8 likes. Okay. Thank you for pointing that out to me. Yes, and good afternoon to you as well. So, now that we've gotten through all of our questions, as far as the people who wrote in go, I'm ready for any other questions you might have. I don't think there's any more up there that I missed at this point. Yeah, it's an interesting path to be on, and there's certainly a lot of different ways of looking at it. I find that attitudes towards omens and animals are fascinating to me because a lot of cultures, crows are bad. You know, they're like just bad. They don't like them. And yet me, I love crows, and I throw them peanuts, and my winter murder has arrived because in the wintertime they gather together in larger groups. So I have up to 80 crows that will come to my lawn for the peanuts that I throw out there for them. And I just find them delightful and enjoy them quite a bit. They're so smart and intelligent and interesting and stuff like that. And I think the reason they have a bad reputation has to do with the fact that they're also carrion eaters. And so, you know, during war and stuff like that in the old days, after a battle, there would be a lot of crows that would come onto the battlefield to pick up the mess that we left behind. And they're just doing their job. So it's just interesting to me that these different ideas come up, and yet on one level there's no real basis for them. They're just ideas that we came up with because there's nothing inherently bad about a crow. And then a lot of people are afraid of owls, especially in North America. Native Americans often see owls as a harbinger of death, and if you hear an owl, that means someone's going to die. And of course, I hear an owl, and I'm like, oh, and I sing hoot hoot back to them, and I love them. So it really depends upon your cultural background, the things you've been programmed to believe, the stories that you've read or been told from your childhood. And it's an opportunity when you are on this path to kind of try and reevaluate some of those assumptions that we've made and change the dialogue between us and nature. Because I don't think nature is really out to get us in particular. If we're in the way, then, you know, that's our fault. We're just in the way. But yeah. So, yeah, I'm living your crow dream. Yes. I love them. They're just so much fun. Do you know much about a witch letter? Letter? Later? Ladder? I'm not sure. A witch oh, you mean a witch ladder? Is that what you mean? I'm not sure what that is. I think that there is a thing you can build that they call a witch's ladder. Maybe that's what you're talking about. I could look it up, but it's not something I work with on a regular basis. So Violet says, I found a book of evil spells once. The Many Crows was really big. Well, you know, evil spells are not good, so maybe the crows were warning you, hey, don't do those evil spells. Lou says, how can we find our spirit animals? And, okay, so there is online, there is a huge amount of discussion about spirit animals, power animals, totem animals, cultural misappropriation, and all this other stuff. So setting that aside, I have, you know, spirit animal is actually a ceremonial magician thing, or power animal. You can call them either one, where you can have an ally that's in animal form on another plane that can be protective, can guide you in certain places. And you can find those doing meditations. You know, you do a meditation to find your animal guide or whatever you want to call it, and they'll usually crop up. The idea of a totem animal is like your nature, your true nature that you're born with. And it isn't just Native American, because in India there's a lot of animal symbolism in their different practices and so forth, and their different deities and everything. So I think that there is like a narrowing of view when it comes to using the terms, and people get very controlling about the definitions of things instead of trying to understand the actual communication, the what the person really means by the word that they're using, because language is like that. So sometimes people discover an animal they have a connection with from just what they're attracted to, or what is attracted to them, like what shows up all the time around them. My daughter had a butterfly that landed on her hand when we were at one of the Native American medicine wheel ceremonies I went 4 years in a row to. And one year my daughter was there, and she was very upset that this butterfly landed on her finger, and she was going like this and it wouldn't go away. And she came to me with this butterfly and said, "Look, this thing is like won't go away. It won't leave me. I can't get it off." And I said, "Well, that's a wonderful thing, because this is a special relationship. You have an opportunity to communicate with this butterfly and see what it might have to teach you." And she sat down, and I think she was only like 9 or 10 or something. And she sat down for like 40 minutes with this butterfly and just stared at it until it finally decided to leave. And ever since then, whenever she sees a butterfly, she can just go and pick it up. It just pick it up. That's one of her superpowers now. She just picks these things up. And when we lived in Santa Cruz, she was walking down the street telling a friend of hers from school one day about her experience with this butterfly, because this was an important thing for her. And her friend said, "Nah, no one can just go pick up a butterfly." And she says, "Oh, really?" She says, "See that butterfly over there?" And she went and picked up the butterfly. And then her friend was afraid of her. Now, this is a funny thing. It's like people are afraid of things that they don't understand. It's like they're convinced you can't pick up a butterfly. You can pick up a butterfly. There's something wrong with you. It's like, okay. But, so you can have encounters with them, and sometimes you can pick them. When I lived up north, I sort of adopted the bear as a teaching model to learn how to be a better mother. And it was specifically the mother bear. And I wanted to tune in to the bear's energy and learn how to both discipline and create healthy boundaries for my children and myself, and protect them from harm from other outside forces that might come in. And I didn't get that as a kid. I was born into an extremely dysfunctional environment with no boundaries were permitted and all this other stuff. So it was an important thing to be able to learn. And that could be considered a spirit animal or, whatever word you want to use. So it's a matter of what your particular needs are at the time and your attraction to some kind of energy that's out there. There's also discussion of whether or not you can have a familiar that's actually like your cat or your dog. And, most of the people on the pagan forums are saying, no, you can't. That's not what a familiar is, blah, blah, blah. And then I was reading a book by Doreen Valiente, who was high priestess to Gardner when he started Wicca. And she had a section on that. And she said the old witches said that, yes, indeed, you could have your pet as a familiar, that was not an uncommon thing. Not all of them are going to be, but some of them can be. So again, interpretation and, whatever we decide is remembering everyone is different. That's really the most important part of this, is that everybody is different. Okay, I really went off on that. So can mirrors open portals in your home without you knowing? Yes. And if you have a home that's prone to having portals, I seal all mirrors when I do my ghost proofing thing. I did a whole video on ghost proofing, so you can look at that. And you can seal up mirrors, but it's not just mirrors. It's water inlets and outlets. It's corners, outside corners, doors, windows. There's a lot of different potential places for spirits to come in and out of. And some mirrors, old ones in particular, that have a lot of energy attached to them, can be portals and haunted on their own right. So, all right. So someone says, that's how I feel about the number 13. Other people think it's unlucky, and I think it's perfect. Yes, I agree with you, Tia. That's definitely an idea. Because, like, all right, it's just a mental thing that people have decided it's unlucky. So Garden of Lilith says, hello, may I ask, what do you think about the Fae? When I was little, I used to be connected to them, and I want to try to strengthen that connection again. Well, I am seriously connected to the Fae myself, and paying attention to them, being open to them, wandering through the woods. You can leave offerings if you want to, have a conversation or see if they're interested in having a conversation, like sparkly objects, colored stones, rocks, crystals. They like honey, milk, and rice in particular, it seems. And I actually have used that to help other people, like a local waiter had this very special amethyst he had, and he was just very, very happy with it. He picked it out special, and it was really important to him. Ian is leaving us right now. That's the sound you're hearing. And so he lost it. He searched his entire house. He couldn't find it anywhere. And so I suggested that he put out an offering in his garden of the milk and honey and rice, and ask the Fae if they could help him find it. And he did that and walked into his house, and it was right there. He found it. So sometimes that kind of thing can work really well. And I think that they're wanting to have more relationships with us at this point. I think that there's a movement on their side to try and reach out. That's what I get from them anyway, because the other night, just before a big windstorm happened, I guess the windstorm happened on Thursday night, and Thursday evening, just before I went to bed, all of a sudden my whole living room was just filled with this very excited bunches of spirit Fae type things. They're just like, like this. I was just going like, whoa, what the heck? And I'm thinking that this was the old-fashioned early warning weather system. Hey, there's a big storm coming. Be on the lookout. And sure enough, that was a huge storm. We had a lot of wind. I couldn't sleep. I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning, I think, and had to get out and sit in the living room and be awake in case a tree came through my house. It was like, you need to be awake. But yeah, that was pretty impressive. And the one that we had yesterday, there wasn't that kind of activity. It was during the day, and maybe that was the difference, was because this one was coming in the dark of night, and they wanted to make sure that I knew it was coming, even though, we now have satellites and all this other stuff. That doesn't mean that the old-fashioned ways of finding things out would suddenly stop, because you never know. Your satellite could go out. You might not know. You never know. But yeah, I do believe that they are wanting to interact on a more positive note. And I think, again, like with the number 13 and all the other things, that there's a lot of attitudes that we take to encounters with the Fae, a lot of fear, anxiety, stories of bad Fae. And it's not that there aren't potential hazards or dangers out there. I mean, the world is a dangerous place. Let's be, clear about that. Most of the world is wild, and most people don't understand that anymore, because most of us live in cities and in places that are sheltered and aren't encountering like the bear down the street, or down the path in the mountain. For living in the middle of the bush in the wilderness for 5 years helped me to understand that principle. And that's true of everything. The world is wild, not tame. Life is wild, not tame. Things are chaotic, not orderly. Everything is constantly shifting and changing and doing. And it's up to us to be aware of our environment and to try and keep out of the path of something that could be bad. So respect, always. Treat any of the things that you encounter with respect, and not fear, but respect. So that would be a little bit of an advice there. I feel like my spirit animal is a bear. Let's see. So Paige says, can you speak on relationships and shadows? I've been closing off a lot of relationships lately in an effort to break patterns. It's difficult because there is also so much love in those relationships. Well, you have to do what is right for you. And at some point, self-love is the thing that matters. Someone might, my mother's definition of love and mine are not the same. When I realized that her idea of love and mine were so utterly opposite, it was very difficult for me for a while to have a relationship with her because, my idea of love is commitment and, clarity, truth, honesty. There's a bunch of things that go into it. My mother's just an idea rather than a reality when it came to it. And so, I have a relationship with my mother. I've realized that she's gone as far as she can in this life. She's definitely made some serious progress, but that is one area that isn't going to happen, and I can just accept that at this point, that, that's just where she's at, and we can just have conversations. But to get there, I had to go through the dark parts. I had to confront my mother about the abuse and how she wasn't there to protect us. And what I really needed was her just to hear me and to acknowledge it. And it took her 5 years to figure that out, to finally get to the point where she could just say, okay. And when I was doing it, I knew that I was potentially losing that core relationship for this life, and that it was scary to do so. Having made a relationship with the goddess already helped a great deal. And so having that internal relationship of a real love, acceptance kind of thing going on already with the goddess helped me to have the strength to face that potential loss so that I could work through it and then move to the other side. So, people are toxic for a lot of reasons. It's not easy to necessarily know for sure exactly where or if you can assist. And people don't want to have help. There's nothing you can do. And I don't think that the worth of our life should be determined by the number of people that we know and that love us. I think the worth of our life is determined by how well we can be a human being and how well we can connect with life and give back to the life force that we've been given. And again, that's another kind of an outside standard that we're told that, to be popular, to be liked, and all this other stuff. And and if you are like getting rid of toxic people, you can still love them, but know that it's not safe or good for you to be around them. It's like it doesn't require proximity, and boundaries are difficult to create, but important. What is and isn't okay with you, and what isn't okay for you, because your feelings matter. That's the thing. It's like one of the narratives we have is that we need to martyr ourselves, give of ourselves, do everything for other people and not for ourselves, and that is the measure of a good person. And I don't think that that's true. I think that taking care of yourself doesn't mean you're selfish. It doesn't mean that you don't care about others, but you've included yourself in what you care about. And if you don't care about you, no one else is going to either. That seems to be quite clear. And I don't have very many true friends. I have less than a handful, I'd say, of people that I feel I can just be with, talk to, have clear conversations with, and not have anything I have to work out or work through and explain, which can get exhausting, to always having to explain what you mean by what you're saying and all that kind of stuff, and not projecting back and forth. It's like they're hard to find. These, a clear person is like a miraculous thing. It's like it's just so nice when you can find them. But everybody is working towards that on some level. They may not know it. They may not succeed at it in this life, but that's the goal, is to sort of get rid of all this excess stuff and to just be a human being. So, yeah, sometimes it makes you feel like you're lonely, but then when you're alone, you have a chance to get to know yourself and you can take advantage of that. So, I guess that's what I would say about that. And you're welcome. Yes, I am a mother bear. Would you like to talk about cleansing yourself of harmful spirits? Had a dream recently saying there was a ghost in me. I've been and have been having synchronicities confirming this. Cold showers seem to help. That's an interesting thing. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what to say about that in particular, but what you're, doing, cleansing yourself and working on yourself, things have attractions, right? So a fish needs water, the bird needs air to fly in, everything has a natural affinity. So if you have what's a negative spirit that's inside of you, as you change yourself, then you'll be less interesting and less comfortable for them to be in. That's sort of how I see it. It's like negative spirits don't like me. I'm not tasty. I'm just like, go away, leave us alone. There's nothing there for them to like chew on or get into. So the more you work on yourself, the more clear you are, the less negative stuff can be around you because there's nothing for it to do. It's like what we think of as negative is going to be attracted to the parts of your shadow self that you haven't dealt with yet. Like whether it's some kind of an angst of, like, do I belong, or what's my purpose, or is anyone going to love me, or any of that kind of stuff, or not. So, yeah, getting clear is the best defense from all of this stuff. Mariana says, hello, Siofra. Could you tell us how we can cleanse our home's energetic field? I've been feeling weird energy with my family. Maybe it's corona and quarantine, but I fear it could be something else also. Well, there's a lot of different ways to cleanse your space. Basic is to do things that you like, having music on that makes you feel happy, putting smells on that give you positive memories, smells that you like apple and cinnamon on the stove, oranges and cloves in a bowl, flowers in the room, whatever it is that uplifts you and makes you feel good. Baking bread or making a nice dessert, smells are very powerful, and smells are probably the closest thing to triggering memories than anything. I mean, a smell of something can trigger a memory easier than any other type of sense. So that would be one thing. Some people are going to use like sage or sweetgrass or myrrh and frankincense, and if you can't have smoke because you have infants or children or lung problems, which a lot of people have, or people are yelling at you for using sage because it's supposed to be only for Native Americans, even though they say they don't care. You can use, you can make sprays, like putting something in alcohol, lavender, cedar. If you have cedar near you, you can use this, cedar smell, unless you're allergic to it, of course. You always have to be aware of your own thing. And you can use sound, so a singing bowl, pots and pans. In the thing on ghost proofing, I go through a whole banish all negativity out of your space and then seal your space up. Actually, I did that the opposite. Probably because I'm used to doing it the opposite because you guys see it the opposite. But anyway, so you go Widdershins or counterclockwise to get rid of all of the negativity. You can use a broom, which is a pretty witchy kind of thing to do. And, just your basic household broom can do in a pinch that's because I'm sort of a kitchen witch sometimes too. I don't have to have something that's just specially made just for that. I'll take whatever I have at hand. If I need it now, I'm going to make it work, and it's going to become like a sacred object like that because, I have it, so therefore it's now going to be power. It's going to work. And you can sweep negativity out of your house. You start at the front door. and sweep counterclockwise in each room. And if you really have something that's in your house, one thing you'll notice, or one thing I've noticed on occasion, is that I'll get confused as to which way I'm going. So periodically I stop and I think about, am I really still going counterclockwise? And I had a couple places I did where that happened a lot. There was a lot of fighting and violence that had happened in this house. And a woman asked me to go over and cleanse it so she could get better tenants, because she didn't want to attract another group of violent tenants. And I'm like, probably a good idea, because anyone coming in here, if they weren't already inclined, wouldn't want to be here because it's got that kind of energy. So they would be attracting the same. And in that house, about every third time I stopped, I was going the wrong way and then started over. And so, keeping focus when you're doing that, and then you sweep all that negative energy out the front door and close the door, and then you start building the positive energy in. So if you're practicing magic in your house a lot, you definitely want to do that. The stuff I have on that video will keep ghosts out. My house is a ghost-free zone. If I'm going to deal with the departed, I go to them. And I also have rules if I'm traveling on a vacation. I don't go usually running around crossing spirits over whenever I run into them, although I have on occasion done that too. But it's up to me. And, it's like, just because someone needs your help doesn't mean you have to stop everything you're doing and give it to them. Because, sometimes you're busy doing other things. And, there's other people out there. So the sealing of the space, and then you can use stones. We have stones laid out through our house, in the outside corners of our house. I think we used obsidian for that, and we put them in the corners and had them there to draw any potential negative energy out, down into the ground. And so they're set. We have them outside of our house too. We have them in our yard, doing the same kind of thing. I've protected my yard with different balls of this and that I've put out there, and casting my circle on a regular basis to, make a containment field, as it were. So negative things don't like coming in my yard. There's so many of those kinds of things. I did a video on psychic self-defense and on the ghost proofing, which go over some of that stuff. And mirrors are helpful for reflecting other people's thoughts. So if you have people thinking about you negatively all the time, and you're sensitive, empathic, and you feel it, putting a mirror up in your windows facing out to reflect their thoughts away, and not just their thoughts, but anyone else's thoughts, is like, is it really your business? I consider it not my business what other people are thinking about me. Because if I was worried about that, I wouldn't do anything. It'd be like, oh yeah, it'd be just terrible. And I know there's people who are going through that, and I really feel for them, because, it's a terrible thing, being worried about what everyone thinks about you all the time. And so, it's like, what I think about myself and what the universe thinks about me, these are the things that matter to me. So there's a lot of different things that you can do. And the main thing is taking control of your space. It's your space. If you decide that it is your space and you claim it, the universe will go like, oh, this is taken. Okay, then let's stay out of that. So that helps, hopefully. Good. Apparently it was helpful advice. Okay, I think I answered Mariana's question at the same time that I answered Paige's question, so I'm going to skip that one. Marco says, do you have a favorite portrayal of magic in a movie, book, show, or anime? Well, I don't watch anime, so I'm not familiar with it, except very few here and there. As far as, there's a lot of magical kind of shows that I enjoy, but most of them aren't very realistic. The Good Witch is definitely realistic, but then it's just too nice. I find it boring to watch on a long-term basis. So I recommend that one just to get a view of what actual magic and being a witch might be like. But, I like, the other stuff. Most of them have everything wrong. I enjoyed Discovery of Witches. I thought that was awesome. It was more of an adult version of witches and werewolves. Oh, no, they didn't have werewolves. They had witches, demons. Wait a minute. And vampires, right. They have witches, demons, and vampires. No werewolves, as far as I know. I haven't read the book, so I don't know. Maybe that's coming. But I liked the way that is portrayed in a show. I thought that was excellent. I loved The Magicians. I thought The Magicians was one of the best shows about magic out there because it showed about real consequences of doing stuff you're not supposed to do and doing it wrong. And, natural consequences, just kind of like, well, that kind of boomeranged out and came right back. And there was an obvious reason that was going to happen. You could see it happening as it was going along. And you're like, yeah. And it wasn't preachy about it at all. It was just like, here you go. So I thought that one was pretty awesome. I thought their hand thing was unique from the other shows, doing spells with movements, which has actually got some basis in reality because you can create your own movements for certain kinds of spells on your own. So you can cast a spell with just a hand gesture. And so, there was some basis there, but I loved the characters. I thought they were very multi-dimensional and flawed and interesting and fantastic and just like the whole thing. I just loved the whole series. I was disappointed when it ended, but oh well. All good things apparently end at some point because, something else will come in its place. But those would be the type of things. But I watch a lot of those types of shows just because I find the fantasy more interesting than some of our reality that we're going through right now, or ever going through. I've always liked fantasy, and it gives me ideas, new notions and stuff like that. And sometimes I actually see something that makes sense. I find it disappointing with the Harry Potter whole thing of creating derogatory terms that now the magical community is using. Ian is outside. Like, I don't care for the word muggle describing someone who's not magical. I think that is a derogatory term like any other derogatory term, saying that another group is less than or all kind of lumped together. And so whenever I hear someone using that term, I try to point that out. And same with Babylon 5. They had mundanes. People without psychic ability or without telepathy or whatever were called mundanes. And it's the same thing, splitting people off like that. And anytime we have that kind of division in society and we point that out, we're creating potential problems of stuff. I don't like it. But anyway, so those are my thoughts on different shows. So Mariana says, should we do a specific spell to start our magic practice? Thank you for the time you put into this. Well, you're welcome. And hi, Tori. Are you the Tori I know from Santa Cruz? Would be the question I'm asking about the Tori. Let's see. Well, when you're starting a magical practice, you should probably go slow to start with. And everyone says read a lot. Reading a lot is definitely a good idea, but there's a lot of people who don't know what they're talking about who write books. So experience is going to be a better teacher. Meditation is definitely probably the most important thing to do in the beginning, especially so that you get acquainted with yourself. But if you mean like just before a ritual, I cast a circle or draw a circle and then call in the directions and, do all that stuff if I'm doing a major magical operation. Some of the stuff they did in the beginning, starting a magical path, was like a bath, ritual bath in the moonlight, was one of the things I did a lot when I was in. I liked that idea of letting the moon touch my skin and just sort of tuning into that energy. So it doesn't have to be elaborate. It's just a matter of starting to change your focus, I think. And some people like to do a dedication. They dedicate themselves to learning. You can find different examples of that, whatever feels right, I guess. So Garden of Lilith says, I've been finding myself hating on the masculine energy, and I fear I will lose the balance just as I did when I was younger and I was thought to fear darkness. Well, it took me a long time to be comfortable with any of the gods, really. The first one I became interested in was Pan, Cernunnos, um, and reading Starhawk's book about the god and the goddess and the energies that they represented, where the male god in her path is not about domination. It's about sensuality and openness, not about domination and control. And so, if you, like me, have experienced a lot of negative male energy, like violence towards you and stuff like that, it's not uncommon to not like that. And it's probably part of your process. I just in the last few years really started tuning into the Dagda. He's the first father god, because with me it was my father who was my abuser from the beginning. And so, relating to a father figure, and then the God, Christian God, sort of presents itself as a father figure, similar to my father, like, punishing and controlling and whatnot. And so I was quite tickled when I actually felt that positive male energy, father energy, the protective, the Dagda. He's sort of an interesting Celtic deity because, he's sexual and sensual. He's got women and all this other stuff. He's got that virility thing going. He's got the feeding of his people, so he's got the magic cauldron, and he's always making sure that the people are provided for and taking care of their basic needs for survival. He's got his staff, and he's protective, and so he's also a warrior. And so there's a lot of this combination of things, and it would be a positive father figure. It would be something that men would and should aspire to be. That would be a better model of a man and male energy. But you're not, it's not required that you do that. It's not required that you decide that you're going to get okay with, any of the gods and whatnot that are out there, or male energy. Just remember that your healing is what's important. And if you get through your healing process, there may or may not be a positive man in your life in the future. It doesn't have to be in order to have a fulfilling life. And that's, again, one of those narratives that we're told. I was told my whole purpose was to find a guy and get married when I was a kid. That was like the whole shebang. There was nothing else. Because I was born in 1950, and we're talking Disney. Oh man, they just really did a number on me. The whole Prince Charming thing and needing someone to validate my existence, etc. So I mean, if that's the stage that you're in, it's okay to be in that stage, and I doubt that you'll stay there because, as we know, the only thing you can count on in the universe is that everything changes. And so, you just go through it and see what comes out the other side and try not to worry about it. As long as you're not running around, hitting men over the head with a stick all the time, unless they deserve it. That's a whole different issue. But, just in general. So there you go. That's my take on that. So Mary says, hello there, I feel connected to the Fae in a way I believe it's because my family name was from a town called Atha, and with some research, fairies are big there. I feel open to talking or seeing them. How would I do that? Yeah, this is watch my video on the Fae and the She and all this other stuff, and the beginning of this one where we were talking about how to get connected to them. It's a process. They're always around. It's not like they're hard to find. They're everywhere. The only thing we have to do is to change our attitudes and be open, and make ourselves appealing. So they want to come and, hang out. So Paige says, thank you. Being honest with ourselves is one of the hardest things to do, working on it. Yeah, I know. It's sometimes annoying. I don't like it very often myself. What makes you excited lately? Oh, well, let's see. I decided I needed to make myself some socks. I decided I had the urge to crochet. I have feet that don't like to be cold at night, and I have a hard time finding socks that are either loose enough or tall enough or warm enough to fit, so I can sleep in them. And so I downloaded all these different patterns for crocheting this and that, and I actually have made the first sock, and I'm halfway through the second sock. So I decided to do that. And my art always excites me, and I'm starting to plan my third big piece. I showed you my peacock last time. You haven't seen the tree because I'm finishing that. That's the biggest piece I've ever done. And so I've been doing research on griffins. I found an image of a griffin that I really like because I'm doing the air next. So I've done like water and earth, and now I'm going to do air. And then, thinking about ways I can change. I do the beading on this white fabric, it's sort of like, what do they call that, interfacing, except it's thick, and it's the substance that you use, but it's always white. And since the beads I want to use for the air elemental I want to put in it are clear, you can see through them, they're transparent. They're not clear, they're colored, but they're transparent. Then I can't have white as the background. So I am starting to experiment with painting fabric and seeing how that works so that I can have a backing that's not white when I put the beads on and make the thing. So that kind of stuff excites me. I enjoy doing that kind of thing. That'd be the most recent thing right now. So that's me. Fatima says hi, hello. Garden of Lilith says thank you very much. You're welcome. Crochet is awesome. I know. Well, I showed my peacock in the beginning of the last video, the last live show, so you can go back and look at that if you want. Magically speaking, I'm always thinking about something. I'm not sure if I have a specific project right now, except continuing what I'm doing, interacting with the spirits that come in my house in the evening. I did have a visitation. Was that the same night that the storm was coming or not? I'm not sure now. I had about 3 different fae that were in my room, all different shapes and interesting. One of them made me laugh, and then I felt I needed to apologize because I laughed because it looked funny to me. A funny shape head thing. So just sort of, continuing on and doing stuff. I'm a massage therapist, so I work on my clients. Healing is something that always has excited me ever since I was little. In fact, the only thing my father ever said to me that was positive was that I had magic hands. And so healing was my natural gift from the beginning. And even he, the evilness that he was, couldn't deny it. So that was kind of interesting in retrospect. And so, just living and doing daily kind of stuff. And it's like in everyday existence. I do my own kinds of meditations. We're still not sure what's happening with Ian's sister and whether she's alive or not. She hasn't been around anywhere in the area that we know of since the 2nd of November. But emotionally, Ian is doing a lot better as far as that goes, helping him work through his feelings of guilt over having to leave when she was 12 and what happened to her later, and taking on more responsibility than is his due. I believe people need to be responsible for their own actions, and trying to keep safe. When I went out yesterday, I encountered one person who didn't believe that COVID was real and that the numbers were not real. And then I encountered another person who thought that this was the wrath of God and we were in the end times. And I was like, okay, that's really nice in my community. So, alrighty then. I'm a realist, a pragmatic person, and I'm literal. I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but I have a literal brain. So certain jokes I don't get because I am literal. It's sometimes quite funny. My husband used to tell me the same joke every year for like 10 years, maybe 15 years. And one year he starts to tell me this joke. And I look at him, I say, you've told me this before, haven't you? And he says, yes, I have. And I said, and I never remember it, do I? He said, no, you don't. So I said, okay, so what's the punchline? He tells me, now I remember it. So he can't tell it to me again. But he thought that was just hysterical, that my brain doesn't retain that particular kind of thing. So that was funny. So Ella says, oh no, wait, back up. How important are aesthetics when it comes to our spiritual well-being? Do you think dark aesthetics can attract negative energy and vice versa? Well, look at me. I'm wearing all black. So clearly the answer is no. It depends on how you feel about them and whether they make you feel dark. I just like black. A psychologist was for sure thinking that there was something wrong with me because I wore black to it. One session that I went to, they were kind of odd anyway. But so we've already talked about protecting energy, I think. Well, your personal energy, like the tree meditation, that was my very first actual video after my introduction. And that meditation goes through grounding, centering, shielding, clearing out and balancing your chakras, pulling in the life force energy from the universe and energizing yourself. And I still consider that is like the best meditation that I've ever come up with. And it's, the more you do it, the more effective it becomes. So if you're wanting to protect your energy, that's what you should do, is do that. And it'll lead you to all kinds of different realizations that are hard to explain, and, connecting to the earth. And if you're interested in faith, it helps with that too, because it connects you to the life force and the earth and everything around us. So you have to do the work. So Ella says, I really would like to connect with my higher self more and also do some past life regression and spirit work. What is the best and safest way to do that? Well, connecting with your higher self would be through meditation and working on your own issues so that you can clear yourself out, so that you can recognize the higher self energy when it comes. Like everything else, it takes practice and you have to be consistent with it. I don't necessarily recommend past life regression. If it happens spontaneously, then you're ready for it. If you try to seek it out, you may end up biting off more than you can chew. It's sort of hard to explain that when you remember something from a past life, you get all of the emotion. It isn't like just watching a movie. It's like being in the movie. So if you were in a war and you were killed on a battlefield, you're going to remember all of that. And it may not be a good thing to remember. Most of the lives we've had have not been that much fun. And if you really go into past life regression, most of the ones you're going to remember first are going to be the icky ones. And I can tell you from personal experience, it takes a lot of work to work through those. So I don't know. It's potentially hazardous to your health. So work on yourself here first, and then if that starts, then that's different. Have I ever, let's see, spirit guides or spirits, I think. Spirit guides are going to be different for people. Like I have 2 guardian angels, and then I have a higher spirit guardian who's like my great-grandmother in a spirit sense. Sort of hard to explain. Tori says, have you ever seen angelic beings? I've heard recently they look very different than they're usually depicted. Oh, I've seen a whole bunch of them, and they look like they were depicted for me. I mean, they've got wings, they're sparkly, they're bright, and they float, and they're pretty, and I like them. And I would see them in churches, and I would see them in the woods. And I was always confused in the churches because everybody in church was like so sad and miserable and depressed. And I'm like, how can you be like that where these, things are floating around? So I have 2 guardian angels. I think that they're not Christian oriented. I mean, I don't think they only belong to Christianity. I think Christianity adopted them. But yeah. So yes, I have. Literal. Yes, I am very literal. What do you think about Lilith and her story? Well, it's a Bible story, and I'm not interested in the Bible stories. And I think it's interesting that she was the first woman and that she was punished for it. And I think that's pretty typical of our society, so it sort of fits. But I have no real connection with her as far as energetically goes. Hi, Vlad from Serbia. Yay! I love that there's people from all over the planet on this thing. It's just great. What are some of your favorite crystals to work with, and do you do any readings with crystals? Well, I have crystals talk to me from time to time, but I mean, I have my favorites. Next to my bed, I've got some selenite and some celestite and some kyanite and some malachite and some tigerite and some labradorite and some lapis, and I just like them all. I've always been attracted to them. Amethyst. I do the amethyst crystal web thing on the full moon every month. Um, yeah, so I do a lot of stuff with crystals. I have a selenite, a smooth selenite wand massage tool that I use in my office, and I use that on people's energy field, and it's really good for decreasing inflammation. I've used it on myself when I've had like a tooth thing or a jaw thing or whatever, and just, gotten the inflammation down by rubbing the crystal on my neck and down out my body. So yeah, I like working with them. Um, so what kind of energy do you get off me, Jordan? That sounds interesting. No, okay. Oh, wait, you guys are going too fast. I can't see that one now. Do I study astrology? No. What kind of energy do you get? I can't understand that because it went up there. Have you had experience with extraterrestrial beings? Yes, but I'm not going to get into that. Etsy is not coming up. I don't know. I thought that I put the right link up there. Maybe I didn't. Are the scarier looking Bible accurate angels not real? I don't know. I haven't met the scary ones. What do you know about star seeds and how to figure out if you are one and which type? Nothing. Because I'm focused on the planet that I'm on. This is my goal this time round, is to accept being here. So I'm purposefully not paying attention to that. And Harpy says they're from Serbia too. Mariana is from Portugal. Yay. Garden of Lilith is from Bulgaria. Wow, this is awesome. I love it. Jordan's from California. Marco, thoughts on aliens? I don't want to talk about them. I want to talk about magic. Aliens is a whole different subject. Cat-like Tweety is from Poland. Okay, Violet found it in my links. Okay, it's working. Yay. Time and space. Hi. Can you recommend a website to obtain crystals? Is it important that they're 100% natural, and how can we be sure? That's just one of those things. It's like, if you can get them in person, it's better. I don't know what websites to order stuff from. I did order some amethyst balls once, one year for Christmas or solstice for Ian and I ordered them from India, and it took a long time to get them, but I decided that I wanted them from India rather than China because I thought maybe it would have, it would have better way of bringing them in. But I know, like, I can't use the Tibetan crystals because I had an encounter with one that was harvested under gunpoint by, yeah. And I'm an empath. I'm not just an empath, but psychometry is something I occasionally do as well. And so it's best if you can hold them yourself and decide whether or not they're right for you. So I don't have one that I can recommend. Devil Blue says, Happy New Moon, filled with benefit energy to you guys. Siofra Ian as a Capricorn. How have you experienced the Saturn in Capricorn transit, and how you feel regarding the 2021 energy? Well, I certainly noticed it, and I was glad I made a Saturnian wand. And I have a good relationship with Saturn, so, I mean, other people find Saturn difficult, but maybe it's because I'm a Capricorn that I have a better relationship with the energy. There's also a lot of misconceptions about what Saturn energy is and what it's for and what it means. So I'm not sure how to answer that. I'm hoping 2021 is going to be way better than, the one we're in right now with the whole pandemic everywhere. It's just terrible. So, Jordan says it changes, but it's basically like your intentions you put out. So if you have negative intentions, it basically goes into the words. and the comments, so it's kind of hard to describe the energy. Someone's from Florida, someone's from Missouri. Oh, what did you say about astrology? Sorry, I didn't hear. Yeah, I am not very good at astrology. I know little basics about it. I've planted by the moon. Some people are really good at it, and if you can find someone who actually uses it like a divination tool, it can give you some insights. But remember, no matter what you're told, it's up to you to decide what path you're going to be on and what you're going to do with it. Even if you have every influence in the universe saying this certain thing is going to happen, you can change that. If you're a witch, then, we take control of our own future. That's what magic is about. You ever been chased by entities in the astral, and what are they? They look human. Are they energy vampires or something? No one has ever chased me in the astral, as far as I know. I think, again, that's because of my energy, and they don't want to be around me, and I have some pretty powerful friends out there. A couple of gods and goddesses here and there, and some spirit power animals and whatnot. So that's not something I can really speak to personally, but I wouldn't like to be chased. Do you think horror movies are bad energy? Well, I frankly hate horror movies, and I don't know why anyone wants to watch them, so I guess the answer is yes. It encourages us to think along really dark lines, and I just don't like them. Prehistoric Matt, I'm so glad I finally caught one of these. Yay, welcome. Gordon says it can be, but someone can have the intention of not spreading negativity, and just that can make it positive. Yes, you rock. Thank you. I love the heart. Jordan says, like if someone created a game with negative intentions over time, it stresses me out if I play it, and someone who created a game with good intentions basically makes me feel good. Well, sounds like you know the answer to that question, because, if we are what we eat, we're also what we think and what we watch and how we feel, so, I like things that make me feel good too. I don't like things that make me feel bad. Although I can watch things that are bad and be separate from them, it's like have an overview, as it were, because reality is important, whether I like it or not. If it's real, I want to know about it. So, there's that. Because if we deny reality, then we're really in trouble. It's not good. So Harpy, also a Capricorn. Yay. I was wondering if... Oh, Mariana was wondering if I was a Capricorn. I swear, yeah, I am. Definitely. And a Capricorn moon as well. I've got double. Conscious and subconscious are all on board with the whole Capricorn thing. Funny how I had no earth in me whatsoever when I was a kid. And I had to work to be grounded. Maybe this is a stupid question, but are there werewolves and vampires? Maybe not in the typical sense in other realms. Well, I don't know. Everything that we've ever thought of exists in an astral realm somewhere for sure. But energy vampires are definitely real. I don't think that the movie version of vampires is real, but I've met a couple of energy vampires, and I've read about their ideals and so forth. And, they're definitely real. And they will, if they can get away with it, try and siphon your energy off. They feel that that's not a problem because you're not even going to notice that they're doing it. And if you don't notice that they're doing it, then they can do whatever they want. And so a lot of times energy vampires like to go to large gatherings where there's groups of people. And so dance hall, a club where there's a lot of dancing and drinking and so forth. And then they get out there and just sort of siphon off people's energy. Some of them are more direct. Some of them are what they call lifestyle vampires. And I've heard of a few of them in our area, actually, that actually only go out during the night and block out all the sunlight, have blacked out windows and stuff. Apparently there's a family south of me that is raising children in this kind of environment. So they're being raised as lifestyle vampires. And some of them actually drink human blood, which seems dangerous, potentially, considering all the, it just seems like a bad idea health-wise to do that. But that's certainly nothing I'm drawn to at all. Werewolves, I think some people like to feel connected to different animals, so there could be some energetic that way, going out in the woods and howling at the moon and so forth. But I've not met any personally, so I don't know. I did see a shapeshifter once. Both Ian and I we were together when we saw it, and that was in broad daylight, and she, because he was a he and then he was a she, was riding a bike. So I'm not sure if that was a person like physical, because it seems odd that a spirit would ride a bike. So I don't know. But yeah, we both saw that. It shifted from an old man with a long, scraggly beard to a younger woman with a round head, black hair, and smoking with no beard. Like that. And we've encountered a few other people who've seen her too, or him. We saw it going from him to her. The other person we talked to saw it going from her to him. So I don't know. I have no clue what that is. It's just sort of bizarre. And if we hadn't both seen it at exactly the same moment in the car, we probably would have thought it was just some weird trick of the light or something like that. But it was just so different and so specific. So that, who knows? There's all kinds of potential things out there. Mary Magdalene and her relationship with the Virgin Mary. No, not really. Since I'm not into the Christian mythology in particular, I don't really know that much about it at this point. I know they're cynocephali, which are basically like Sasquatch, but they have a wolf's head. They call them dogmen now. So Mariana says, yes, agreed. Energy vampires are totally real. You think they're like this because of trauma, and is it reversible with therapy and or healing? Well, I know a couple of them that was definitely because of trauma. They never learned how to get energy from the earth like you're supposed to. And I think that they can get better, but in their tenets, if you read their tenets online, one of the things they like to do is stay away from witches because we want to heal them, and they don't want to be healed because they say there's nothing wrong with them. That's just the way they are, and they like it the way it is. So there you go. It's going to depend on them, I guess. Do you like to exercise your chi or energy, like holding it in your hands for long periods of time? Do you know if that is a good way to exercise your sensitivity to energy? Absolutely. In fact, in my video on energy exercises, I talk about doing that. And as doing healing, psychic healing, I was a psychic healer for like 15 years. Feeling the energy coming out of your hands is how you know things are happening. And at this point in time, when I cast my circle, if I draw the pentagram in the air before I go to bed, I can actually see the energy. I mean, it's sort of like being on acid and seeing time slow down, and there's a lot of like waves of energy. It just sort of keeps going around. It's interesting, especially in the twilight. It's easier to see energy in the twilight. And then sometimes when I'm in bed, I see colors. They just like come, all these amazing colors. And sometimes after the colors, a spirit will come to visit and show themselves. So you never know. I mean, it's just sort of the way life is, and I experience it when it happens. Not trying to make it happen. And since I'm a massage therapist, I work with energy all the time, because when I'm working on people, that's what I'm doing. I had a client that came in once and said she didn't want to have any energy work whatsoever, and I couldn't work on her at all. Because every time I would start to try and tune in to what was going on in her body, and I could, I started to feel like a tension somewhere, and I'm automatically, entering into that space to relax those muscles and to move that energy, she would call me on it. It's like, I'm sorry, if you're going to get a massage and someone's going to touch you, you're going to get energy work. It's not possible. I'm not a robot. You'd have to have a non-living thing touch you in order for that to work. So, yeah. I have no idea what the shapeshifter was. Thank you. I appreciate the compliment. I was wearing one of my little pieces of costume jewelry for my peacock. I'm attracted to peacock things. Let's see. Have you ever encountered any demons, and are they all bad? Well, demon is a word that denotes bad, but it comes from a word that just denotes spirit. So it's one of those things is like garbage men of the universe, covered with gunk, but doing their job, not necessarily evil, you know. Um, so yeah, I don't know how to answer that one right now. So, what's your thoughts on marijuana and LSD? Well, I sure as hell won't do either one because LSD is what threw me into my shamanic dismemberment thing. And if you want to know about that, you can watch that video because that was intense. And my brain chemistry is such that I have to do everything I can to stay grounded and stay here. And I can't do marijuana because of that either, because I just fly off, and then it has a bad reaction. My husband does it for his anxiety, and it helps him. And I think that I might be able to do CBDs if I needed to for pain control, so long as there wasn't any THC in it. But everyone's brain chemistry is different. So it's not about judging the thing itself. It's about what works for you and what doesn't work for you. So that's all I can say about that. What do you think of yin and yang? I think that it's an expression of everything changing into something else. It's like the positive and the negative, or what we think of as positive and negative, the dark and the light. Everything has got a softer side and a harder side. And that's basically what it's about, and that's why there's a small black dot in the white and a small white dot in the black. It's a very good symbol to represent that movement of change, and that everything has the opposite in it in some level. Garden of Lilith says, for me, it's easier to see the energy in complete darkness. I always see funny energies before I go to bed. Yep, me too, definitely. Time and Space says, what the hell, I was just feeling the energy between my hands the other day. I forgot how strong it is. It makes my bones sound like they are creaking. Yeah, that's always funny when energy moves through you and things pop. I had some kundalini come up my spine, and it like popped all of the bones in my spine, and then it did all the bones in my head. It's like I could feel them shifting, because you got like 7 plates in your head, and all of those plates were like creaking and moving. It's definitely interesting. How did you know you were a witch? Well, I just knew. I mean, always. I remembered being a witch and being burned at the stake when I was like 4 years old. So, not that I was 4 years old when I was burned at the stake, but that's when I remembered that happened to me in another life. So I always knew I'd been here before, and I always knew I was a witch. That was just like a knowing. So some people can become witches and decide to be witches. They say that we're not born this way, but it depends on how many lifetimes you've had and where you are in your progress as to whether or not you might be born a witch, and I clearly was. So Tori says, when I was a kid, I would open my eyes at night and see little colorful shapes in the dark like confetti. I remember being giddy and trying to touch them. Could this have been real? Absolutely. I see that stuff too, and little sparks and stuff like that. And it's energy. It's a visualization of energy. Garden of Lilith says, no, demons are just vibrating on energy closer to us. They are not evil. Angels are higher vibration, and that's why people think one is good and the other evil. Jordan says, I took a lot of LSD when I was 13, and it opened me up a lot. Yeah, the thing I don't like about drugs personally is I don't have as much control over when I want to stop. So I like doing things natural as much as possible, because that way, if I get into a situation where suddenly this doesn't seem right, I can just stop it right there. But if I've taken a substance that is carrying me into a space, then I have to wait the substance out, and I don't have a choice. So I like having control. I guess that's a control issue for me. Do you know Studio Ghibli movies? No. I think you would say you would enjoy Spirited Away. Trying not to spoil it, it's about a girl that starts working in a hotel for deities after losing her parents. Okay. Well, if I have time and I remember, I might look that up. Marco says, you are a very sweet person. I love your videos. Thanks for answering questions. You are welcome. And actually, we've been at this for an hour and 49 minutes, so we're going to have to stop. Hey, Mika. Yay, I managed to catch a live video. Love and miss you. I love and miss you, too. I hate this whole pandemic things when we can't see each other. So, hi. We're going to have to talk so we can, hang out. So, Garden of Lilith says, we as humans always tend to believe that light equals good and darkness evil, and that's not true. Dark and light are just two ends of the same thing. Well, absolutely. I mean, that's like a value judgment that we make about things. I think that there is real evil, but I think that's humans, not nature. I think nature is just doing its thing. It's not about being personal. When I almost drowned in the ocean, it was very clear to me that the wave didn't care who I was, what I'd done. I was just in the way, and it was just trying to turn everything it found into sand. That was all it was doing. It was not personal at all. So, yeah, we have a lot of those things. Time and Space says, feel that in my neck and head sometimes too. Paige says, do you think you are the fundamental person in every lifetime? Like, are you a witch in every lifetime? No, I'm not a witch in every lifetime because I've remembered a bunch of them when I wasn't. But I have worked for a lot of different gods and goddesses. I have several lifetimes I remember in Egypt and in Greece. And, you know, I'm pretty sure I must have had some in India because for some reason the Hindu deities just think I'm the cat's meow. They just really like me and they keep coming around. So I'm assuming that, you know, I just haven't remembered all of them, which is probably good because there's probably thousands and that would be kind of overwhelming, trying to figure out how to navigate the one you're in if you're always remembering the ones you weren't in or aren't in right now. So, but yeah, I don't know if it's just an essential part of my nature or not. It just comes out in different lifetimes, but it definitely came out in this one for sure. And spirits respond by moving the branches of trees. I'm working on being more observant. Well, I think that sometimes they can. I mean, I threw a stone into a lake as an offering to the undines in the lake. And, you know, you throw a rock, the physics of a rock is it goes up and it comes down. There's like this arc that it makes. It's pretty predictable. And the rock went up like this, and then at the top of the arc went straight down. Something came up and grabbed it and pulled it down into the water. So I love when I see things that aren't supposed to be possible. And, you know, I've had other things like keys appearing in the middle of the air and falling on the floor in front of my face. My daughter saw that one too, you know. So I know that this kind of stuff can happen. Dematerializing and rematerializing objects is something that can take place. There's no reason why something can't move because the spirit moves it. But then not all of them are going to be that. So, you know, always stay grounded as well as you can. So Harpy's Nest says, I would like to say that magic is the most fun one can have and that you don't have to take everything so seriously. Yes, I agree. Wish all of you well. So do you have any recommendations on how to learn about past lives? Well, that's one of those things again. It's like not a good idea to just sort of decide to do it. Tori says, thank you. So grateful for your videos and to have a genuine and experienced person to learn from. Do you feel any connection to Kali Ma? Oh, yes, Kali has been with me for a while. I met Kali when I was in Santa Cruz, made a connection with Kali, and she is one of my personal goddesses, and she is in my bedroom on one of my altars. So we have a definite thing going. And one have different incarnations in other galaxies or spaces other than Earth. Okay, guys, you guys are really trying to keep me here, and it's now almost 2 hours, so I'm going to have to stop. So remember, you can send me a list of questions, and we will get to those questions at the beginning of every show or somewhere in between. And I will be here next week. And the video I just put up, it was late getting up because we had technical difficulties with a software program. It was crashing constantly, and Ian had to like update it and do all kinds of stuff. So it came out, and it's on mental health and medicine and magic. So I'd like to have a discussion about that actually on our next live show, if people need to talk about it, and you know, just sort of use it as a subject. So I'm glad you all came. I really appreciate it. It's a highlight of my week. I really enjoy these live shows now. It's kind of odd that it happened, and it's sort of synchronistic. So, okay, guys, talk to you soon. Have a wonderful week and stay safe, and blessed be all of you.